Hello, people of Earth, welcome to the Front Page Fables. I got amazing Am I the Asshole stories, so sit back and relax, but before. AITA for refusing to drive my car to school just to avoid riding with my brother. A few months ago, I 16M was going to the store, and my brother 15M told me that he wanted to ride. When we got in the car, my brother asked me if he could drive us to the store. I at first told him no because I was already in the driver's seat, but then he kept begging and I was like, all right. The store was literally 3 minutes away by car, so I didn't think it'll be a problem since my brother was already trying to get his permit, so we switched seats. We did not make it to the store that day. My brother put the car in reverse instead of drive and reserved the car into a fucking tree. He didn't even go slow either. He caused my car to have a broken taillight, a lot of scratches, and 2 big-ass dents. My dad was pissed and grounded us and took our phones away, which I felt was unfair. We had to ride the bus to and from school until I was able to get my car back. A little over a month ago, I finally got my car back and my phone, and I was happy until my dad told me that I would have to get a job because I needed to pay him back the money he lost. I was understanding at first and asked him if my brother would need to get a job too, but he told me no since it was my car and told me that I shouldn't have let him drive without having a permit in the first place. I really felt like this was unfair and told my dad that, but he told me that it wasn't unfair and that I should take responsibility for my actions. I told my dad that I feel like I'm getting punished over my brother's mistake and I don't like that. He told me that it wasn't a punishment and it's to teach me responsibility. My dad told me how he understands how it might look unfair, but I have to take responsibility for my actions. He said it was my responsibility as the owner of the car since I allowed him to drive it. I told my dad that I only agreed to let him drive it because he was already going to class to get his permit and that the store wasn't far away. My dad told me that that was my mistake and I have to own it. I have been working for 3 weeks now and I hate it. I work Fridays, Sundays, and on Friday of last week, I was driving my brother and I home from school, and he looked at me with a smirk and told me that he hopes I have fun at work today. I ignored him and then he said it again, and so I pulled over and told him to get the fuck out. He refused, and I told him we were just gonna sit until he does. After about 10 minutes of sitting, he finally got out, and I drove home to get ready for work. After I returned home from work, my dad had already made it, and he was mad at me. He told me that my brother told him that I left him on the side of the road and told me it was dangerous of me. I told my dad that I didn't care, and I don't want him riding with me anymore. My dad got upset when I said that and told me that it was irresponsible of me to let my brother walk home alone and told me that if I didn't apologize he'll take away my phone. So I was basically forced to apologize to him. My dad then told me that I wasn't allowed to leave my brother stranded again, and I told him that he wouldn't have to worry as I would just ride the bus home. My dad asked me if I was seriously gonna ride the bus just to avoid having to drive my brother, and I told him that I was. I don't think my dad thought I was serious because this morning I decided to ride the bus to school, so my brother was forced to ride the bus as well. I didn't think much of it since I had already told him I wouldn't be using my car to ride to school anymore, but my dad sent me a text telling me that we're gonna have a toll when he gets home from work. I don't think I did anything wrong and I'm confused. Update. To sum it up, my dad gave me an ultimatum and I'm sure he hates me. So basically when my dad came home, he went straight to my room so we could talk. He told me that he's disappointed by the way I'm handling things and that he only wants what's best for me. I told my dad that what he's doing is not for the best because I'm getting put with all the responsibility and my brother is still not held accountable for anything. My dad told me that he understands my frustration, but my brother shouldn't have been allowed to drive in the first place, and that was my wrongdoing. He then said that he'll talk to my brother and get him to stop rubbing in the fact that I have to work. He then said that he's sorry that my brother was getting under my skin, but I shouldn't have left him on the side of the road as that was dangerous and irresponsible of me. He told me that he expected better from me. My dad then said that he expects me to start using the car to drive to school again because he didn't buy it for nothing. He then told me that he also expects me to allow my brother to ride with me because he doesn't want him riding the bus alone. He said that if I have any more problems with him to let him know rather than leaving him on the side of the road. I told my dad that I don't want my brother to ride with me as driving my brother around isn't going to be beneficial to either of us because he'll distract me and I don't want to be in another accident. My dad then asked me why I feel like my brother would distract me, and I told him that he angers me and driving while angry is not safe. My dad told me that my anger is misplaced and that I have to own up to my mistakes. I told my dad that I have owned up to it, and I'd just rather my brother own up to it too. My dad told me that he will, and not to worry about it and just do as he say. I told my dad that I absolutely do not want to ride with my brother as it's an unsafe situation. My dad then asked me if I feel like I can control my anger when I'm driving with my brother, and I told him no, thinking he'll be like, okay, he doesn't have to ride with you then. No, he told me that he understands, and that instead of driving my brother home, I can drive myself to therapy after school since I can't control my emotions. I asked my dad if he's serious, and he told me that those two were my only options, and to let him know what I pick by tomorrow morning, so he'll be able to try and find an available therapist soon. WTF. I tried to tell my dad that that was not a fair choice at all, but he told me that he just wants me to be the bigger person and not act so immature like my brother because he doesn't want to deal with two of him. I told my dad that I don't want to deal with him either, but my dad told me I know my options and I have until tomorrow morning to decide. I then told my dad that I was just playing, but he still said that those were my only options. After that, he literally just left, and he's been in my brother's room the rest of the time. I really don't know, and if I'm being honest, I'm pissed off. I didn't think this was how it was gonna go. AITA for not wanting to do the prank the bride is asking me to do during her wedding ceremony. I 23M am one of the groomsmen for my best friend's 35M wedding. His fiancée 33F is a known jokester and likes pulling pranks that don't affect anyone beyond making us laugh. Stupid, funny things like this that she'd go out of her way to do to make us laugh. It's never anything harmful, and the farthest she's ever gone was accidentally destroy the groom's shitty Toshiba laptop and surprise him with a brand new modern Alienware one that he had been saving for 2 years, for she backed up everything and only destroyed the screen, so stuff could still be salvaged just in case. Pretty sweet stuff, honestly. My friend is a bit more of the serious, logician type, so she balances him out a lot. He finds her antics pretty amusing too, probably a driving factor in their relationship. Sorry for all this preamble, I'll get to the point. So, neither of them really care for the ceremony aspect of a wedding. They're gonna get a courthouse wedding and save the money for a nice reception with only close friends and family. There's going to be 3 witnesses, me, the BM, and the Mo, and the wedding will have at most 4 or 5 more friends and some of the groom's family. The bride was all for this, as she can get really anxious in big events like this, but she still feels like it's not something to really write home about. So she wants to pull a pretty notable prank by having a dramatic objection or something during the ceremony. Since I'll be the only single one there, she wants me to do the objection thing, seem like I'm going for her, and then plot twist, vie for the groom. Then she wants us to do a sword fight for his hand. I wish I was joking, but she and the groom actually have a sizable sword collection, and she said she'd get her Mo to sneak 2 of the smaller ones. The Mo who was there while the bride was talking to me interjected and said it was a stupid idea. Relief. She'd get fake swords, since there could be issues in smuggling actual weapons. Plus, she'd run it by the officiant and whoever else she'd have to at the courthouse to make sure not too much of a commotion was created. Stress. I, admittedly, am a bit of a doormat and didn't outright say no at first, and I was hoping the Mo would say something. Then, I realized I needed to pull my big boy pants and say no. Which I did. Yay! They weren't happy, and not in an angry way, but in a way that made me feel immediately guilty. Not yay. I stupidly offered to think of a different joke to pull. They've added me into a group chat where I've constantly tried reiterating how I didn't feel comfortable with the pranks, and they try to reassure me, trying to get me to reconsider. The Mo is calling me an asshole for not following the bride's wishes, as are one other mutual friend who the bride talked to about this. It's getting harder and harder to stick to my no. So AITA for calling out my stepdad's parents for how they talk about me, and telling them they should be more honest around my mom and their son. Sorry if the title doesn't make sense. I'll do my best to clear it up. I 17F have a blended family. My mom brought me and my 2 half-siblings 10 and 8 into her marriage with Mark 2 years ago. Mark also had 2 kids when they met. My younger siblings and my step-siblings call Mark and my mom and dad. My step-siblings' mom is only sort of present in their lives. She lives in another state and doesn't really keep in touch with them often. They can sometimes go over a year without seeing or hearing from her, and they don't remember her being more present, so to them, my mom is their mom. My siblings feel the same way about Mark because they don't remember their dad. I was 12 when my mom and Mark met, 13 when I met Mark, and 15 when they got married. Because of my age and being used to not having a dad, I never saw Mark as my dad. I don't call him dad. I don't introduce him as my dad either. Mark doesn't care. We have a good, solid relationship, but it's different to the one he has with my younger siblings and step-siblings. My mom also doesn't care, and she was really instrumental in everything being open and clear to both Mark and me when they were dating and figuring out how to blend things. Mark's parents do not like me. They hide it incredibly well, like they have never said anything or shown this directly when my mom, Mark, or I are around. I was helping Mark with some errands recently, and I met someone from his parents' church who scolded me out of nowhere. It really took me by surprise because I had seen this person twice, maybe, and didn't even know their name. Mark doesn't either. But she recognized me, and she told me it was disgusting how I treat Mark. I was so shocked. She told me it wasn't surprising Mark's parents didn't like being around me and found my attitude repulsive. She walked away before I could ask any questions. A couple of weeks after that, I saw Mark's parents out running their own errands and heard them talk to someone else about how awful I was. They accused me of disrespecting Mark. They said I was a teenage terror who was out to make everyone's lives hell. They made some wild accusations. Then that weekend, they were over at our house acting totally normal. Mark's mom gave my brother her phone, and he saw a contact saved under. I called the phone, and sure enough, it was me. This is when I spoke up, and I called out Mark's parents for how they talk about me, and I told them they should be more honest around us about what they think of me, really. Mark asked me what was going on, and I told him about their church friend and what I heard them say about me. Mark was furious with his parents, but they were furious that I didn't stay quiet because they're allowed to find it disgusting and rude that I won't accept their son fully. Mark and my mom kicked them out, but Mark's parents said I was stirring shit. AITA for not giving my roommate a tampon and telling her she can no longer use anything I own. This is such a stupid post, and I'm still so embarrassed and flabbergasted that this even happened to begin with. For context, I 25F live with roommates, all are female. We've all gotten close in the 2 years we've lived together, except for one roommate. We'll call her Emma, 23. It's not that I dislike Emma, but we've never meshed as well as my other roommates have. The other day, Emma called us all out to the living room where she was folding her laundry. She held up a pair of underwear and asked if it belonged to any of us, and I recognized them as mine, so I said yes. I apologized for the mix-up, and she immediately started yelling at me about how disgusting I am and how she wanted to light herself on fire after touching them. Since I live with all girls, this happens all the time and none of us ever get weirded out by it. I can't even begin to count how many times someone's bras, socks, underwear, etc. have gotten mixed with my laundry by mistake. It's a bit embarrassing to admit, but I realized they were actually an old pair of period underwear that had I cannot stress this enough minor blood stains on them from years ago when I first got my period. Emma again decided to loudly announce how gross she thought I was and how I should be ashamed for not throwing them out, and tried to get my other roommates to look and join in on her outburst. Thankfully, I live with some awesome girls, so nobody even batted an eye despite me being absolutely horrified that someone I live with would do something like that. Everyone was quick to reassure me that it's no big deal and it happens to all of us. They tried to tell Emma to chill out, but she wasn't having it. She just went to her room and slammed the door. For the next week, Emma didn't speak to me. She would loudly talk to all of our other roommates with no problem, but the minute I tried speaking to her, she would just walk away. A couple days ago, I was laying in bed and Emma was the only other person home. She knocked on my door, and when I opened it, she sheepishly asked me for a tampon, saying she woke up from a nap and bled through her shorts. How ironic. I laughed and told her no. I didn't have any left, and I knew our other roommates had some somewhere, so it's not like she had nothing. Yesterday, she asked all of us if she could borrow a shirt because her clothes were in the washer. We all said no, and I even said I wouldn't want her to light herself on fire after touching any of my nasty stuff. She rolled her eyes and gave me a half-assed apology, and I told her I don't want her touching or borrowing my stuff if that's the way she acts about a natural bodily function that she also goes through. She called me childish and said she didn't see the big deal. Now, there's this weird, passive-aggressive vibe every time we're in the same room, and I'm wondering if I should just apologize or not. I talked to some friends, and they said I've got nothing to apologize for, but I'm wondering if I overreacted. So Ada, edit. Good lord, since so many people are seemingly so fascinated by my so-called impossible pair of underwear that are over 10 years old, let me say this here instead of saying the same thing 10 times over in the comments like I have been. My mom bought them for me when I was like 14, and they ended up being way too big for me, so I only wore them in times of desperation until recent years. Never thought I'd have to explain my underwear to hundreds of strangers on the internet, but there's a first time for everything, I suppose. Ada, because I agreed to take my ex-girlfriend's daughter out for a day while she had the break she told me she wanted. So, whilst frolicking somewhere local and doing my daily Reddit message check, I noticed at the top of my screen was a post from this sub that seemed to fit my situation, so of course it sparked my interest. I read the whole thing and figured it could only be a coincidence and pure irony me seeing said post, so I've made a throwaway to describe my side of things. I met Harriet at a place local to where she lives. I'm not sure on the name of it, but inside it had stalls and places to buy things. At the time it had just been Christmas, so there were still decorations out, and it was a great place to take children, basically. She worked on one of the stalls there, so I went over to her, and we got to talking. She seemed very happy to be around me, and I've been told by many people in my life that I give off a positive energy. Only now I know what I initially thought isn't true with Harriet. We went on a date after a while of talking over text, and it went great on my side. She told me all about her issues with past relationships and how I'm her first in 10 years. I understood how she didn't want me to meet her daughter for a good while, and I agreed and said I wouldn't mind meeting her at her own pace. I never pursued that conversation afterwards, and I wasn't desperate to meet her either. On our next meetup, she brought her daughter without my knowledge, and I had my kids too because she had already met them, and their mother couldn't take them, leaving me no choice but to bring them along. Also, I didn't want to cancel on Harriet because of how excited I was to see her, and she expressed the same feelings back. I had a good time with her, and Olivia played with my kids in a small play area across from us where we could see them. Some other kids were there too, and they all made friends with each other while me and Harriet talked about why she brought Olivia with her. She told me it was because she had gained a tiny bit of trust in me and brought her along with the intention of her getting to know my kids a bit better. I said that it was fine, though a tiny bit confused, having been told she didn't want me to meet her for a good 6 months. The other night she invited me over to her house at 3 in the morning and asked me to stay the night because she really needed somebody with her apparently. Harriet brought up how she needs a break and just wants it to be her on her own somewhere. I offered to take Olivia somewhere one day with my children so she could have her break, and she instantly got up and yelled at me, called me all sorts of names, so I of course threw some back at her, though trying to stay as calm as possible. Though Olivia had heard this and come out of her room. Everything in Harriet's post happened, and I left. Except I never yelled, so it was her who made Olivia cry, not me. That's the whole truth. Ada.